So hello everyone. So this is my week 5 presentation and I have been tasked to do 2.6.9 and let's get right into the explanation. So first of all, this is the problem. So the problem is that if Adams wins the election, Brown will return to private life. And if dies before the election, then Adams will win it. Therefore, if Brown dies before the election, he will retire to private life. And we are to translate this into logical notation using the arrow for if then, meaning a conditional, and then test the validity of the sentences by the truth method. And here we are given that English conditionals aren't truth functional, and we are to verify it by doing a truth table of this whole statement. So first we will do what's asked. We will write these sentences as conditionals. And first we will make a few definitions, of course. So first is the first sentence. Adams wins the election, and we will denote that as W since Adams wins the election. Then, oops, hey, okay, never mind that. And then Brown will retire to private life, which is the second statement that is uttered, and we will denote that as P for here. And then the third one, Brown will die before the election since Adams will wins the election is in being implied here in this sentence. Adams will win it. So we denote Brown dies before the election as D. And so we will write this sentences now into a to an if then statement, meaning a conditional. So for our first sentence here, um, if Adams wins the election, Brown will. Oh, there we go. So if Adams wins the election, Brown will retire to private life, and we will denote that to us as a conditional. So if WP, and then for the second one, if Brown dies before the election, Adams will win it. Meaning, if Adams will, if Brown dies before the election, so D, and Adams will win the election instead. So no, no. So if D, W, and then if Brown dies before the election, therefore, if Brown dies before the election, he will retire to private life. So if D if DP, which is here, since we are checking for the validity of the argument, then if we are going to make a truth tree of the whole argument, then we will have to do a truth tree of the premises and then the denial of its conclusion. So of course this sentence is our premises, the if WP and if DW, and this is the conclusion if DP. Therefore, if we are going to have those sentences in a truth tree, we will have this sentences instead. If WP, if DW, and the denial of DP, which is not the if DP. And this is the truth table as it shows. So first, this is our first sentence, which is a proposition, which is a premise, I should say. And then this is also a and this third sentence um is also a and I published it's also a premise. That's what I should say. And so it's easier to start if we would start with the decomposition of statement three, which is not D, A, and P. So as we have referencing the rules of inference that was studied in rules in chapter 2, the denial of a conditional can only mean there is only one case where the denial of a conditional can only arise with the antecedent being with the con with the antecedent being true and the consequent being false. So D is true in here, and then P is false in this case. And that is the composition of this conditional right here. And then we are going to use statement 1 and decompose it. And we are to show that that if W and P, and that must be true in all cases. And for that to be true, then either the antecedent will be false or the consequent is always true. And that is what we show here. The first case being that the antecedent is false and the consequent being true. And and here in the second branch of the tree, we also already see that there's already a contradiction between the two, since this path shows that P must be true when P is false. So we will cross that statement out. And so we are left with the second part of the tree, which is this one, with the first branch of the tree, you should say, meaning this one. And then we are going to decompose to the composition of statement 2, which is if dw, meaning for this one, again, the antecedent should be false, meaning for the first branch, this should be false, and this should be true, which shows here. And looking at this path again, there will be a contradiction since, as we established earlier, that for the composition of the third statement, this should be true, but it shows that T is false. So again, this branch will be closed off. And then for the second one, it's also the same thing. It shows that the consequent, meaning W here, should be false when instead it should be should is true when instead it should be false. So there's again a contradiction. And we are left with the tree having no closed branches, meaning no closed paths, I should say. Meaning it implies that the argument is valid. This whole thing is valid according to the truth tree. But let's think for what this implies in a second, because let's again look at the conclusion. Therefore, if Brown dies before the election, he will retire to private life. Does that sound correct? Because well, think about it. If Brown dies before the election, does he even retire? Does he even live? So even though the three are resulted in a close one, which implies that the argument is valid in this case, um, the what is implied here cannot happen in real life, since as I've stated earlier, are you really retired if you are dead? And even though the truth tree is valid, that does not sound, if that makes sense. It does not sound correct, I should say. So we cannot really. So what this means that even though the this method is very effective, as we have seen in the earlier exercises, it cannot really. We can also arrive at the wrong conclusions too if we are fed in the wrong conditionals or statements, because it does not really make sense. And this shows in this exercise. And I have concluded that as much as effective as the truth method is, we can't really do much if we are fed faulty statements. And it also means that English conditionals aren't really truth functional, because English, such as any other language, as you say, is very, how can I put it? Can be very contradictory in terms of wording, as we have shown here, and as in the examples before stated in the book. Because by what we really, as I recall, I read that, as I recall reading in the book, that it explains that what we really mean by if then, it says as instead of being a conditional, we mean it as a biconditional, if that were to if that makes sense to you. And yeah, going back to the topic, so this truth table shows us that this indeed shows that the English conditionals aren't really truth functional. Sorry about that. Anyway, so that will be it.